So I'm rewatching all of Stargate, and today we begin with the movie from 1996. My overall impression from this movie is that it still works, it's still sci-fi, and I really liked it, even watching it now in 2025, when we have so much new technology and things are advancing in other ways, like AI. Because this movie has a dated element, it still holds up, I think. So now let's talk about a couple of things in the movie that I want to mention and have a little bit of a discussion about. The first thing I want to talk about is the world building. If you look at the Stargate movie from 1996, you'll realize the storytelling works for our time too. A Stargate could exist in our world and we would not know about it. That makes the storytelling so much better because it makes you wonder, what if? What if it happened in our world? What if? The next part I want to mention is the contrast between Daniel Jackson and Jack O'Neill. Both of them in the movie come from a place of suffering. Daniel Jackson suffers because his life is quite miserable. He's misunderstood and broke. On the other hand, you have Jack O'Neill, which is a career military man, grieving the death of his son. The dynamics between them and the mindset between each of them is quite wonderful. When they step through the Stargate into a new world, Jack O'Neill is still in his mind about completing the mission, while Daniel Jackson, on the other hand, thrives with the locals, opens up, finding love. Okay, and the final thing I want to mention is how beautifully this movie set up SG-1. The movie introduced the SGC, and it transitions beautifully into the pilot, where in the pilot they decide that there are going to be multiple SGC teams stepping out through the gates to find new adventures for Earth. So overall, I love this movie. It still holds up in 2025. You should definitely watch it if you want to get into Stargate, because that's the point of origin. That's the what started it all, and you have to watch it. Okay, so that's my review for today. Tomorrow we begin with the pilot, and I'll see you at the gate. Bye for now. Welcome back to my Stargate rewatch. Today we're talking about Stargate SG-1 Season 1 Episode 1, which is the pilot. So at the beginning of Children of the Gods, which is the name of the first episode, we realized that the gate had a tarp over, it was unused somewhere in a military base, the SGC, and then Apophis arrives. Apophis abducts one of the soldiers, a woman, and then brings her with him back through the gates. This is kind of the instigating encounter, and from there the gate begins to be active again as they launch their investigation of where he went and where he took this woman. I loved how throughout this episode we realized that the SGC team and anyone who had any relation to the Stargate just didn't know that it could go other places. It just goes to Abaddon. That's what they all thought. And having that realization dawn on them throughout this episode, as Daniel and Carter work through this room in Abaddon that Ra had with all the addresses of other places that he knew about. This was great. I loved this. Like, it added to the lore, and it also launched the series, because it was not like just one storytelling encounter in the movie. It was this opening of a Pandora box that says, oh, this is way more important than we thought it is. Literally anyone can just arrive through this gate. And also the introduction of the Iris. So we are left with a few storylines by the end of the pilot, which is save Share and save Skara, and also Kowalski has a little bit of a friend that he needs to deal with, and those kind of like open up the season. Like, okay, we are going to need to find Share, we're going to need to find Skara, and at some point we will have to deal with the gold in Kowalski. But it doesn't all have to happen in one go. Like, we can gather information about where Shara and Skara went throughout the season. So if I had to like review it as a whole, I think it's a great episode. Also, I didn't say it when I introduced the rewatch, but I'm also writing blog posts on the episodes themselves on orencohen.co, which is my blog, my personal blog. So if you want to read like a lengthier version of this review, of this reaction to an episode, you can go find it there. And yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye. Welcome back to my Stargate rewatch. Today we're talking about Season 1, Episode 3, The Enemy Within from SG-1. A little side note for those of you who wonder where Episode 2 went, because the last one was Episode 1. So technically, the pilot is 2 episodes combined into one TV special. So from Episode 1 and 2 combined together, we are now moving to Episode 3. So the gist of this episode was to resolve the little friend that entered into Kowalski during the ending of the pilot. Overall, I thought it was a really good episode to kind of like tell us more about the Goa'uld and teach us who our enemies are. Throughout the episode, we learned that a Goa'uld body can be removed from the spinal cord, but they can actually leave it behind and invade your brain. We also learned another important thing about the event horizon of the Stargate. If it shuts off and part of you is in the event horizon, you lose that part. While this was a plot episode, it still had that containerized feeling of being in a small space. We didn't like move into a different world. We didn't do some grand adventure. It was contained into the SGC, and you'll see that this is something that comes back in a lot of TV shows where they want to conserve budget, especially in the old times when TV shows had a specific budget for 22 episodes in a season and you had to make do. And sometimes some episodes would get a treatment to be very, very short on their budget, but still tell a good story. So I feel like this episode was one of those. And overall, it was really good. I enjoyed it. And I would love to know what you thought about it in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll meet you at the gate. Bye. Welcome back to my Stargate rewatch. Today we're talking about Stargate SG-1 Season 1 Episode 4 called Emancipation. I think a good place to start is what the hell. This episode did not age well. It is really disturbing to watch. But yeah, let's talk about it. So technically SG-1 is in the process of checking some addresses and visiting some planets now that they have the Stargate operational. And this is one of the planets that they arrive on. And this planet, or at least this community close to the gate, is a community where women are viewed as property. I get that you would want to show our values as humanity, that women should not be treated as property, but this episode did not do it that well, in my opinion. During the episode, Carter is sold to a chieftain after she was kidnapped by Abu, who secretly is in love with the chieftain's daughter, Naya. In his mind, bringing Carter as payment for his daughter would allow him to be with Naya that he loves. Carter tries to escape, but is captured in the act. And then we have O'Neill coming up and buying her back with a gun. So where did all that feminist energy go? The episode kind of redeems itself when Carter is chosen as the fighter to fight this chieftain and wins because she has combat training. And it does seem a little comical because this fight at the end of the episode kind of resolves everything magically. I don't know, it just didn't feel right. I wrote about this episode a lot more on my blog, so you're welcome to check it out and comment there. But if you already watched this episode, let me know what you think about it in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you at the gate. Bye. Welcome back to my Stargate rewatch. Today we're talking about Stargate SG-1 Season 1 Episode 5, The Broca Divide. So for starters, I already have a little bit of beef with this episode. Can you guess what that is? It's fine, I'll tell you. In this episode, there is a planet with a dark side and a light side. You just cross a certain threshold and you move from being in a place with light to a place with darkness. And I would expect a sci-fi show to explain what's going on here. If this was fantasy, I would say, okay, magic. But this is not fantasy. This is supposed to be a science fiction show. I can make a whole other video about why it doesn't make sense, but fine, we'll move past it. So my first question was, what is the Broca divide? Apparently there's a region in the brain called Broca's area. If you injure it, for example, by a car accident or an injury to the head, language collapses. You become unable to speak and to articulate your thoughts in language, in your voice. In the show, however, there is a virus that apparently has some kind of effect on that region in the brain, and people regress to become savages. On the one hand, I want to call this a filler because the first 5 minutes of this episode, we have O'Neill says, okay, there's nothing about the gold in this world, let's leave. But they don't. Then we have all this outbreak that they need to deal with. And the reason I'm not calling it a filler is because we have Dr. Fraser's introduction. One thing leads to another and she saves the day with the help of teal'c and his immunity to any kind of disease, and everyone returns to normal. Overall, I think it was a fun episode. I believe there are many more of these kinds of like one-off adventures that don't have anything to do with the main storyline because they needed to fill 22 episodes in the first season and you don't have much lore to cram in the first season. So it will be interesting to see what else this season has in store. I already watched a few of the other episodes, but not all of season 1 yet. And yeah, let me know what you thought about the episode in the comments below, and I'll see you at the gate. Bye for now. Welcome back to my Stargate rewatch. Today we're talking about Stargate SG-1, Season 1, Episode 6, The First Commandment. Okay, so this one is another filler. And while fillers do not advance the main plot, they do serve other purposes. One of which was to let us know that Carter was engaged, and she's no longer engaged. So in this one, we visit a planet where there's apparently harmful, deadly radiation that everyone alive is prone to, but the vegetation isn't. The people on this planet are not advanced, and they also live in caves. That said, we know that Captain Hansen, which is our objective for this mission, who SG-1 is looking for, has turned himself into their god. It's not exactly explained how he made that leap to being a normal person and then becoming their god, but I think it has something to do with the deadly radiation in this planet, and apparently he stayed out too long. One thing leads to another, and apparently the gold has left us a shield device on this planet. The team resolves the puzzles of how to activate this one and discovers that there's another one somewhere else. The teal'c finds out later. I also loved the beat in the episode of helping these people think for themselves and not just blindly follow whoever claims to be their leader. And this empowerment also leads to the first in the series where the Stargate itself is used as a death trap, because the SGC revoked the codes that they need to enter before the iris will open. So anyone who is thrown into the gate without the code being entered will not reach the other end because the iris will prevent them from doing so. And as we know, if you are in the event horizon, when the gate shuts down, you're dead. Anyway, this was a good episode to show us what's possible within this universe, what kind of communities we reach, and yet it still felt a little bit lazy because we didn't encounter anything other than another SGC team, and of course the natives of this planet. Anyway, that's all I have for this episode. Let me know what you thought about it in the comments below. If you want to keep this wormhole open, hit subscribe or follow wherever you're watching this. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll meet you at the gate. Bye. Welcome back to my Stargate rewatch. Today we're talking about Stargate SG-1, Season 1, Episode 7, called Lazarus. Right out of the gate, I want to say this episode had so much potential. It apparently begins with an alien that doesn't know anything about humanity taking over O'Neill's form while the real O'Neill is stranded on a planet, and then kind of like retraces his memories. The prompt of this alien form was really innocent in a way, yet it did allow us to kind of dive deep into O'Neill's past, and that really broke me. Trigger warning, we're talking about guns now and gun violence, so if that triggers you, maybe feel free to skip this one. So as we know from the movie, O'Neill's son accidentally unalived himself using his gun. That's trauma that we see in the movie in O'Neill's responses and how he acts and reacts to things that are happening. But so far in the show, it wasn't really shown as part of his past. So this episode serves as the perfect opportunity to kind of retrace those memories. And the alien goes to talk to his ex-wife and tries to find his son, which he doesn't know that no longer exists. The real O'Neill finally catches up, and a kind of like search begins to find where this alien went to. And by the end of the episode, we kind of have this really emotional, beautiful moment of the alien turning into their son and giving them kind of like a proper goodbye. My only problem with this episode is that it felt, in a way, so hollow. This alien that was doing all the plot advancements was so rigid. There was no, like, not a lot of talking, not a lot of, I don't know, something felt off, which that's the main thing that should happen with this alien, because it's not human, it's a rock with consciousness. At least for me, something felt weird in the way that this plot was advancing, even though the entire story was really touching, and I really liked it, diving into this history and seeing O'Neill's ex-wife. So overall, yeah, it was good. I don't know, I didn't mesh with it like I would in some other episodes. Overall, still a filler, but good plot in terms of like diving deep into getting to know O'Neill better. Anyway, that's all I have for this episode. If you want to keep this wormhole open, remember to subscribe or follow wherever you're watching this. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll meet you at the gate. Bye. Welcome back to my Stargate rewatch. Today we're talking about Stargate SG-1, Season 1, Episode 8, The Nox. Finally, science fiction. I think so far this was my favorite episode of Season 1. I haven't watched the rest yet. And yes, if this is your first time here, you're probably wondering if I haven't watched Season 1, why I'm calling it a rewatch. Then the answer for that is because I already watched all of Stargate Atlantis and all of Stargate Universe and a lot of the later episodes of Stargate SG-1. But I didn't watch the first ones. So this is a watch, but later it will become a rewatch. So I'm just branding it all as a rewatch. Anyway, the Nox, let's talk about them. So apparently SG-1 is entering into this world where something happened to the gate, it's gone, it's no longer there, and now they're kind of stranded. And while stranded on this planet, they meet these beings there that look humanoid, but have like leaves and branches in their hair and look a little pale and very innocent. While this is happening, the planet has another visitor, Apophis himself. Some clashes go from here to there, that doesn't really matter. Apophis survives the attack, while SG-1 is removed from the fight. Apparently the Nox do not believe in violence, and they prevent SG-1 from attacking Apophis and killing him. By the end of the episode, we not only discover that the Nox are not as helpless as they seem, but they are not innocent as they seem either. In fact, the Nox have an entire city floating in the sky, which was amazing to watch. Even in that era of CGI and graphics and stuff like that, I don't think it was even CGI, but it was just graphics and stuff, it was amazing to see it. Overall, so far, I think this is probably my favorite episode, as I said. And yeah, I would love to know what you thought about it. If you want to keep this wormhole open, please subscribe or follow wherever you're watching this. And thank you so much for watching, and I'll meet you at the gate. Bye. Welcome back to my Stargate rewatch. Today we're talking about Stargate SG-1, Season 1, Episode 9, Brief Candle. So I gotta be honest, it's another filler, but it was a good one. So in this episode, we have SG-1 arriving in a planet where people are very chill and carefree, and apparently something in this planet makes them age very fast. We also have this storyline in the episode where O'Neill is offered a cake, and that cake has drugs in it, and in his intoxication he makes some love to the woman who offered the cake to him, and then we figure out that he's infected with some kind of robots in his bloodstream. Time is ticking and we have O'Neill age very fast, and not only cosmetically, he is also aged in his mind. And by the end of the episode, it's actually teal'c who realizes what's going on and finds the secret compartment where there's a signal that's being sent to all of these mini robots in everyone's bloodstream. Overall, I feel like this was a good low effort filler because it was also science fiction-y. There wasn't like extreme production value that you needed to do aside from having O'Neill age on camera. But other than that, yeah, it was a great episode. I loved it. Let me know what you thought about it in the comments below. If you want to keep this wormhole open, please subscribe or follow wherever you're watching this. And thank you so much for watching, and I'll meet you at the gate. Bye. Welcome back to my Stargate rewatch. Today we're talking about Stargate SG-1, Season 1, Episode 10, Thor's Hammer. I'm not really sure how to classify this one. Technically, it's a filler because it doesn't advance the main plot, but it also helped us learn more about the Goa'uld. Essentially, the team arrives on a planet thanks to teal'c's advice, where there's a hammer, and that hammer does not allow Goa'uld to surpass the gate area. When a Goa'uld is detected, they are instantly transported into a sort of prison in the mountains where they can't leave because there's a hammer-shaped door that will prevent them from passing through with lasers and pain. There are two main things I want to say about this episode that I loved. First off, we know there's a way to save Skara and Share. This hammer, even though by the end of the episode it is disabled, proves that even when a Goa'uld takes over your mind, there's still a way to reverse the process. And not only it gives us that hope, it also gives us knowledge about an alien civilization, alien species that exists in addition to the Goa'uld that we already know of. The second thing we learn from this episode is that the Goa'uld has been taking over bodies much older than humans. We know this from this creature that we find in the cave that teal'c and O'Neill has to face while trapped inside this area. And if there are more like him, we're in big trouble. Anyway, I really enjoyed this episode. It didn't feel like a meaningless filler. It felt like something that actually contributed to the lore of the world, even if it didn't like help us advance the story forward, like helping find Share and Skara. Still, I felt like it gave us some more context that we're missing. What did you think about this episode? Let me know in the comments below. If you want to keep this wormhole open, please subscribe or follow wherever you're watching this. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll meet you at the gates. Bye. Welcome back to my Stargate rewatch. Today we're talking about Stargate SG-1, Season 1, Episode 12, The Torment of Tantalus. Okay, so listen, I'm so excited about this episode because I recognized Paul McGillion. He was Dr. Beckett from Stargate Atlantis. He only appears very briefly at the beginning of the episode, but it lit up the entire episode for me. Anyway, what I loved about this episode is how, again, like the last episode, we have this resource, this new amazing thing that we might be able to use, like Thor's hammer from the last episode, that we could use to save Share and Skara. This time we have this castle where all of the great races of the galaxy converged and met and saved all of their information in, and now they had to leave it behind because there was a storm that probably was going to destroy the entire castle, and they were also stranded there because the DHD device fell off to the bottom of the ocean. I think this episode was geared more towards Dr. Daniel Jackson because this was like the knowledge, the opportunity, and he had to give that up to survive. In addition, we have the other storyline in the episode of having Catherine, which was introduced in the movie, and Paul McGillion's character here, have them reunite after so long, and that was so heartwarming. I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I have like a soft spot in my heart to see elderly people being happy, like when you do something nice for an elderly person and they are happy, it just makes me feel happy, and I don't know, I enjoy it very much. So seeing that in the episode was so fun and so satisfying to watch, where they finally reunite and also living their lives. He lived there alone for so many years, like over 50 years by the time the episode comes out. Yeah, it was a fantastic, phenomenal episode. I loved it very much. And I'm not even going to dive into whether it was a filler or not. It was just amazing and a great episode to watch. So that's what I thought. Now let me know what you thought about this episode in the comments below. If you want to keep this wormhole open, please subscribe or follow wherever you're watching this. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll meet you at the gates. Bye. Welcome back to my Stargate rewatch. Today we're talking about Stargate SG-1, Season 1, Episode 12, for real this time, Bloodlines. So in this episode, we get some more context into what teal'c left behind. We learn that teal'c has a family, and he has a kid that is going to go through the ritual of implantation. What an awful name for this procedure of implanting a person with a Goa'uld larva. In any case, now that teal'c tasted freedom, he is committed to not allowing his son to go through the same process. I think my favorite point in this episode is everything and anything related to Bra'tac, and also the age reveal of him being 133 years old, and also the heartbreaking moment of having teal'c give his own Goa'uld for his son, and then him being saved by the Goa'uld that Daniel Jackson and Carter stole from this incubation thing. We also get some more context for how people live under the Goa'uld. These people are slaves and they have a miserable life. Yet, when you're in it, it's hard to see it, because teal'c's wife, she was like, I begged the priest to come do this. They were going to let us come back to live inside the city. So we do know that these people accept the torture that they're going through. In any case, a very insightful episode. I really loved all the pacing, like seeing teal'c's home destroyed, and like this writing on the wall, like this signal that says traitor. All of these little things help us learn more about the Goa'uld and about the world and lore of Stargate. What did you think about this episode? I loved it very much. Let me know in the comments below. If you want to keep this wormhole open, please follow or subscribe wherever you're watching this. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you at the gates. Bye. Welcome back to my Stargate rewatch. Today we're talking about Stargate SG-1, Season 1, Episode 13, Fire and Water. So this episode started very strange. I honestly thought from the beginning that something was wrong with all three of the characters that came through the gates, Carter, teal'c, and O'Neill. Something about them felt wrong to me. And later on, we understand that it's their memories being modified. But at the beginning, my first gut reaction was maybe they are clones, because we've seen that already in Season 1. We already know it's possible to imitate a person. I was thinking maybe that's not the real people. Afterwards, we discover that this episode has actually a very heartbreaking moment when we realize that all of this that this alien did was to actually discover what happened to his mate. And his mate was killed by the Goa'uld. Also, if you want to be a little bit critical, it is a little bit of a stretch to think that the person that comes into this world and that alien witnessing him saying a remote piece of information about Babylon would actually know what happened to his mate. I guess it worked, because as we see later on, when Daniel Jackson is put under the machine to recover his memories, we see that he did actually read something about Belos and Amoroka, And that is when this alien discovers that his mate was killed. After 4,000 years, he finally has closure and can grieve. Honestly, this entire episode was dealing with loss. I mean, the entire first section of this episode is actually doing the wake and memorial service and treating Daniel as if he were dead, and then afterwards discovering that their memories are altered, and Daniel wanting to help this alien discover what happened to Amoroka by offering his brain for investigation. Overall, I think outside of being a good watch, it was also a very heartbreaking episode, and that shrill that the alien did at the end when he realized that Amoroka is dead, that was painful. Anyway, let me know what you thought about this episode in the comments below. If you want to keep this wormhole open, please follow or subscribe wherever you're watching this. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll meet you at the gate. Bye. I did not expect Hathor's introduction to be this chaotic. Let's talk about it. So, episode 14 introduces Hathor. She is awakened in a Mayan pyramid within a sarcophagus similar to the one shown in the movie. Honestly, there was a moment in the beginning of the episode where I thought she might actually be good. Turns out, no, she wasn't. I mean, this episode got so wild so fast. She basically turned every male that she came into contact with into her slave. And she did it so deviously as well. Like, I want to kiss your hand. I want to give you respect. I want to, and then the sci-fi needed to kick in. That scene of her sitting down in the water with all the small Goa'ulds swimming in the water. And then there are also the bits that we can't really explain. Like, how did she actually make all of these people obey her commands? And also her turning O'Neill into a Jaffa just by pressing this shining stone into his stomach. But we also discover one crucial bit of information that if we find another one of these, we can actually heal teal'c. And of course, one wave of her hand weapon causes this sarcophagus to overload and explode. I think the most interesting bit in this episode was all the lore and the information that we learned about the Goa'uld. They have queens, and the queen can actually spawn those Goa'uld out of her body. It's really disgusting, guys. It's really awful. I mean, we all witnessed what happened to Kowalski when he was actually taken by the Goa'uld. But it makes me feel like queens have a deeper change into their body if they can make all of this happen in a matter of hours. And to top it all off, she survives weapon fire, and not only does she escape the room where all of the firing happened in, she also manages to escape through the Stargate, which was such a badass moment for her. I love it. So Hathor is definitely someone we are going to see again. Anyway, it was an amazing episode, 10 out of 10, and 10 out of 10 for chaos too. Let me know what you thought about it in the comments below. If you want to keep this wormhole open, please subscribe or follow wherever you're watching this. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll meet you at the gate. Bye. SG-1 finds an entire science team dead except for one little girl, and she's the key to everything. Let's talk about Singularity. Honestly, this episode broke me. Cassandra is probably at the age of my niece, and I felt so bad for her. I really loved seeing the bond that formed during this episode between Carter and Cassandra, and how Cassandra starts trusting Carter as the episode progresses more and more. We also learned that the Goa'uld can be very cruel. To put this bomb inside a girl and hope that she just die. I mean, the last episode showed us a little glimpse of what they're capable of, but this one gives us more context to how cruel they really are. The entire build-up to the bomb going off and then discovering that it's proximity-based and not time-based was chef's kiss. I think it's also the first time in the series that we see a Goa'uld mothership. We saw Ra's mothership in the movie, but I don't think we've ever seen a mothership of one of the other Goa'ulds in Stargate SG-1. Also the scene of Carter in the elevator, going up, then regretting and going down to stay with Cassandra. Oh my god, this was so well done, so good, and so gut-wrenching. Also, I really loved that it ended with Cassandra living on Earth now, and I couldn't help myself and checked online and noticed that she is referred to in future episodes, but I don't know the context, so I'm just excited to see that. In any case, this was an amazing episode. I loved it very, very much. Let me know what you thought about it in the comments below. If you want to keep this wormhole open, please follow or subscribe wherever you're watching this. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll meet you at the gate. Bye. If a war criminal defects and saves lives, do they still deserve to die? That's the question Cor-Ai throws at teal'c and at us. This episode was mostly a nod to court drama shows. There was trying to convince the crowds, there was trying to convince the convicted. The angle here is that teal'c also believes he should die. Later on, we see that there was some kind of logic to teal'c's decision to kill the father of the one accusing him. And that reason was because these people do not run away. They do not leave anyone behind. But this wasn't enough to convince the people of the village that teal'c is a changed man. Instead, what finally makes the difference is teal'c saving the life of the person condemning him to death, and then telling him that he's ready for his sentence. I think this is such a badass teal'c moment, because the entirety of this episode revolved around teal'c wanting to stay the course and respect the people's wishes, and O'Neill and Daniel Jackson and Carter trying to free him from that so they can run away from this place. But at the end of the day, now that we kind of finished with this, and teal'c is now seen as a friend, these people are actually seeing Earth people as friends too. I also like that they didn't give an outright answer to the question they implicitly posed at the beginning of this episode, because context and nuance is key. Anyway, this was an interesting episode, very thought-provoking. Let me know what you thought about it in the comments below. If you want to keep this wormhole open, please follow or subscribe wherever you're watching this. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll meet you at the gate. Bye. So what should humanity do when we meet aliens that tell us we're too inferior to teach? That's exactly what happens in Enigma. So this episode was a lot of fun. There are a few elements that I want to talk about. First element is the cast. This episode has one familiar face. If you've watched Stargate Atlantis, you know that one of the aliens that SG-1 rescues from the planet is actually the same actor that plays Dr. Weir's husband. It's so funny to think that this actor was actually involved with Stargate from season 1 of SG-1. The second thing I want to talk about is actually the technology that these people have. So we first see that they can move through walls, and we also see that they can send intergalactic messages somehow with light. There were a few interesting things over there that I think might be introduced later, might be explained better, or not. Maybe they'll just leave it as science fiction. And the third element is the return of the Nox. The last time we saw the Nox, we know that they locked their Stargate or buried it or whatever they did to prevent people from dialing in. But now, after this intergalactic message was received over there, they actually dialed into the Earth gate and brought over all of these survivors to their planet. And of course they did that when the US government is actually actively trying to prevent them from leaving, and the Nox woman has actually special powers to just make them vanish and move through the gate, and even just open the gate without dialing, which was very strange and very cool at the same time. So overall, I really like this one. Let me know what you thought about it in the comments below. If you want to keep this wormhole open, please subscribe or follow wherever you're watching this. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll meet you at the gate. Bye. So what happens when the SG-1 team is split mid-travel? Let's talk about Solitudes. So this episode introduces an element of the Stargate system that I thought was introduced much later, but apparently it was introduced already in Season 1. And I'm of course talking about the base in Antarctica. In this episode, we realized that there is another Stargate on Antarctica, and Carter and O'Neill were actually dropped there instead of the SG Stargate. The whole episode focuses on trying to understand what happened to O'Neill and Carter, and I thought in the beginning this was going to be like a time travel thing, but no, this one introduces the concept that a wormhole can jump between gates if there is more than one gate, and I think there's a solar flare somewhere involved in this, not sure. But at the end, we realized that they're not on a different planet, they're actually in Antarctica, in this base that was unknown until that moment. I really love this one. Again, this is one of those episodes that don't span like a lot of locations and anything like that, just Carter and O'Neill in that snowy and freezing area, and what happens on base. Let me know what you thought about it in the comments below. If you want to keep this wormhole open, please subscribe or follow wherever you're watching this. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll meet you at the gates. Bye. What would you do if you discovered that you are not your true self and are actually a robot? Let's talk about Tin Man. So this episode is actually brilliant. We spent about half the episode discovering that something is wrong with the team. teal'c doesn't have his Goa'uld, suddenly they feel very powerful, Daniel Jackson doesn't need his glasses anymore, and the entire team demonstrates knowledge that they shouldn't have. And later on, the POV shifts to see that the actual SG-1 team is stranded in a room where they're being either monitored or just held, and there's a conflict there that the robots feel that they should be the ones to go home, but they need to accept that they're not their true selves, and their true selves are actually standing in front of them. This is brilliant storytelling. I loved this episode so much. And it also introduces a loose end. These people, these robots, are still out there. Anyway, let me know what you thought about this episode in the comments below. If you want to keep this wormhole open, please follow or subscribe wherever you're watching this. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll meet you at the gates. Bye. Remember that time where Daniel Jackson got stuck in an alternate reality? Let's talk about There But for the Grace of God. I feel like aside from preparing us for the finale, which is going to be a two-parter, episode 21 and episode 22, this was also a fan service, because over time, when we are spending time with these characters, it's kind of fun to imagine a different alternate reality for them. So in this episode, we see that Daniel Jackson gets stuck after touching a mirror, special mirror, in one of the abandoned Goa'uld bases. He is transported into a different reality, and there we see that Daniel Jackson is no longer alive, so he is kind of a surprise anomaly in that universe. We see Carter as a doctor and a civilian, not in the army. We see O'Neill as the general. We see Hammond as a colonel. And we see that teal'c never joined the team and is actually one of the Goa'uld leading an attack on Earth. In addition to that, we see also Catherine as part of the SG team, still working on the Stargate. I really love the dynamic of having Daniel Jackson be the one person in the room who knows things, and all of these other people are just oblivious and don't really know how to handle a global Goa'uld attack. And at the end of the day, they all sacrifice themselves so that Daniel Jackson can escape back through the gate and prepare his own people to defend against this attack. So when Daniel Jackson finally returns through the mirror, he is injured, and he also has the address where the attack will come from. Anyway, this was a great episode, really hyping you up to the finale. Let me know what you thought about it in the comments below. If you want to keep this wormhole open, please subscribe or follow wherever you're watching this. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll meet you at the gates. Bye. So what do you do when you know an attack on Earth is about to happen, but SG-1 is tied up in bureaucracy? Let's talk about politics. So this episode took us to a trip down memory lane. Most of this episode was just sitting around a table and rehashing things that happened in the past. This kind of episode would not fly with the 2025 and 2026 audience. I mean, there was nothing new in this episode aside from the ending, which was the Stargate program shutting down. And it even ends that way, like there's a to be continued at the end, and the team looks devastated that the Stargate team is about to be closed and they can't do nothing about the attack that's about to happen. I think this is a great storytelling moment, like this is the lowest of the low that SG-1 has been in this season. But today, I don't think I want to be reminded what happened in previous episodes without getting something new. Of course, a callback could be great, but not like sitting around the table rehashing the previous missions. Actually, this is a great opportunity to know what you would have done if you watched this now. Would you feel comfortable watching an episode like this, where nothing new happens and we just get reminded what happened in previous episodes? Let me know in the comments below. Anyway, this was the first part of the finale. The next video will be about the finale in the Serpent's grasp, so stay tuned for that. And if you want to keep this wormhole open, please subscribe or follow wherever you're watching this. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll meet you at the gates. Bye. It's the finale of Season 1, and Jack O'Neill and Scar finally reunite. Let's talk about In the Serpent's Grasp. So the beginning of this episode is very dramatic. We see SG-1 essentially break out of the SGC through the gate into a gold mothership. Through Season 1, we did get some glimpses of the motherships, but we haven't been on one. And this is the first time we are actually visiting one. Not only do we get a renewed appreciation for the sheer scale that the gold bring with them, we now see that motherships can actually house and use Stargates on board. And of course, we also see Skara, which is not Skara anymore. Skara is now the host to Chlorel, which is apparently the son of Apophis. One amazing thing we see in this episode is that Chlorel gets shot with the Zat gun, and then we see Skara regain control for a few moments. This is the confirmation that our teammates have been seeking, whether something remains after the host is taken by a Goa'uld. Anyway, one thing leads to another, and we end the season on a cliffhanger with this mothership now approaching Earth. An emotional moment happens for Jack O'Neill when he needs to choose between Skara and Daniel Jackson. I'm very excited to talk about the beginning of Season 2, which opens up new threads and stories and a lot of new opportunities. In any case, if you've been here from the beginning of this season until now, thank you so much for sticking through with this journey of mine. And now we begin the next chapter, which is Season 2 and beyond. And I'm very excited to be able to watch and talk about all of these as we prepare for the new season that will drop sometime in 2027 or 2028. So if you want to keep this wormhole open, please follow or subscribe wherever you're watching this. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll meet you in Season 2.